Welcome everybody. Welcome sports fans. This is another episode of Sports We Watchin Livin Talkin, and I'm your host Herschel Robinson, aka HersheyR47. Of course, that's my Instagram handle. And guys, before you move forward with the video, please make sure you're subscribing so you don't miss any new content that I have and leave some comments. But I want to get into it. The first thing I want to address today, guys, is the NFL. I want to talk about a little bit of Matthew Stafford. I'm going to get into the Super Bowl a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit of Russell Wilson. So, to kick it off, the first question I pose to you guys is, does Matthew Stafford make the Los Angeles Rams a Super Bowl contender? Does Matthew Stafford make the Los Angeles Rams a Super Bowl contender? So, you know, I'm going to give you my take on it, guys. I think the answer is yes, but with the caveat, right? So when I look at their defense, I don't think they really need to make any moves defensively. They had the number one defense in the league. They have elite corners, especially Jalen Ramsey, who's arguably the best or top two cornerback in the league. You've got some good pass rushers on the outside and Leonard Floyd. You've got arguably the best defender in the league, but surely the best defensive lineman, Aaron Donald. So defensively, I don't think they really need to do anything. They got a lot of speed. On offense, the offensive line seems to be, top five offensive line. But at receiver, I think they still need to make a move at receiver. I like Robert Woods. I like Cooper Kupp. But the last time the Rams went to the Super Bowl, if you guys remember, they had Brandon Cooks. And although I don't consider Brandon Cooks a number one receiver, I consider him a field stretcher. So a field stretcher, I think, is a guy that typically is probably going to be somewhere around somewhere between a 4.2, 4.3 speed. But a guy that can eat up ground, and typically he can beat his one-on-one matchups. And so I don't necessarily think they have to have a number one receiver. It would help. But I think they need a field stretcher. So there's a few guys out there that I took a look at, looking at the free agency landscape right now. The first name I want to mention is Will Fuller. Will Fuller's a 4.3 guy. Will Fuller showed this season some consistency. It was the first season I think he didn't battle injuries. He balled out with Deshaun Watson. Unfortunately for him, though, the season that he did go without injuries, he tested positive for PED, so he got suspended for 6 games. So he missed the rest of the season. The next guy I want to mention is Marvin Jones. Now, Marvin Jones is a little bit older. He's 31. Assuming Marvin Jones is still a 4.3, 4.4 guy. He played with Matthew Stafford in Detroit. I think Marvin Jones could be that field stretcher and be in that position where Brandon Cooks was back when they went to the Super Bowl a few years ago. Now, the third name, which I'm not as high on, but he is a field stretcher. He is a fast guy, and he started to come on of late in his career the past few years, is Brashard Perriman. And that's kind of on the low end of a field stretcher. But I would really try to target Will Fuller if I could. Secondly, Marvin Jones. You probably won't have to break the bank on either one of those guys. Now, there's talk that Matthew Stafford's getting some text messages from players saying they want to come out there to LA and play with him. And see, that's what happens when you get a really good quarterback that goes to a good team. We've seen it with Tom Brady. We see that in sports across the board. If a really talented player goes to a team that they feel like can compete for a championship, other players want to play with them. And although the media and many of the fans don't realize how talented Matthew Stafford is, the players in the league know how good and how talented Matthew Stafford is, and they just know that he's been in a really bad situation in Detroit. So when it comes to that, though, I really believe if they were to add one of those guys, I do believe that they will be a championship contender. I think one of the issues that Sean McVay and that coaching staff had with Jared Goff is that they always had to manufacture offense and yardage with him, meaning that if plays broke down or if it wasn't play action or if they were in third and long, situations multiple times throughout the day, the game, or even in the red zone, right, when you have to make some tight window throws to fit it in there because the space starts to shrink in the red zone and in the end zone. Jared Goff can't get it done. Jared Goff has been pretty good in play action, but if you look at his numbers, there's a big drop off in his play action completion percentage and success than just regular drop back. And so when I say drop back, your 3-step, but especially your 5 and 7-step drops, right? Especially when you're trying to move the ball down the field. So the other thing is he's a pocket passer that doesn't really have great mobility. Well, Matthew Stafford has shown that he has good mobility in and outside the pocket. And I know a lot of people talk about, Matthew Stafford didn't win any playoff games. Well, Matthew Stafford in his career has only had one top 10 defense. That was back in 2014. The team went 11-5, and they were third against a total pass yardage, I believe it was. And then, no, it was third against points, total points allowed. And then they were second against passing yards or total yardage allowed. So they had a really good defense then. So they were top 5 defense. They went 11-5. They lost first round. And that was back when Matthew Stafford had Calvin Johnson, Golden Tate. But much of the offense was a lot of dink and dunk offense. They were like 28th total in offense. I think it was under Jim Bob Cooter was the offensive coordinator. The head coach was Jim Caldwell. So, however, with the Rams, they run a lot of motion, pre-snap motion to try to get a bead on whether the defense is in zone or man coverage. They run a lot of bunch formations. They manufacture and create ways to get their receivers open. And in bunch formation, it's a lot harder to try to double guys or to man up on guys. It's hard to just get up on the line of scrimmage and jam guys. You got to back off a little bit and play what I would call, if you're going to play man, a little bit of a matchup zone, right? Like you're kind of zoning, but you're manning the guy that comes into your area. So that's why I would say it's kind of like a matchup zone. You kind of exchange, and it makes it much more difficult to try to defend and take a specific receiver out of the game plan. And so I do believe that's another thing that you're going to see out of that offense, especially if they get a field stretcher, is chunk plays down the field, right? You'll probably see them get in the red zone a lot more often. And the one player I think it really helps the most is Cam Akers at running back. Cam Akers kind of started to come into his own late in the season because he's a rookie. And for you fantasy football aficionados, I'm going to tell you guys that that's one player that you should look out for to have a breakout year. They've shown that they are not afraid to give him the lion's share of the carries and the touches in the backfield. We've seen what happened with Todd Gurley days, right? So with Cam Akers, when you're running more against light boxes and then they start to get him more acclimated into the passing game, I think Cam Akers is a guy that could potentially creep into that top 5 fantasy running back. So that's just a little bit of nugget for some of you guys that are interested in fantasy football. So I would really look out for that, especially if they add that field stretcher. So, again, just to sum it up, I think that those guys are a championship contender. But if they add that one field stretcher, I think now you're talking about the Rams can now possibly compete with Tampa Bay. They can compete with Green Bay Packers. Heck, I think they can compete with the Packers now, beat the Packers now. But to try to compete with Tampa Bay, I think they're going to have to add that field stretcher and get some chunk plays. So kind of sticking with championship contenders, guys. Of course, we just came out of the Super Bowl Sunday. Kansas City, Tampa Bay. Kansas City got Thanosed by Tampa Bay, man. I'm talking about Thanos had the Infinity Gauntlet on, and I'm talking about he just demolished them, right? Like it was Infinity War, and he destroyed the Avengers. So, few things I kind of want to touch on. So first, I want to give Tampa Bay and Tom Brady their props. The defense played extremely well. They got after it. The offensive line blocked very well for Tom Brady. Tom Brady completed his passes at a high rate. He did what he had to do to win that game. He took advantage of opportunities when Kansas City either turned the ball over or they had short fields from maybe shank punts. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I have to give them props for that. But there's a few things I want to touch on. One thing I want to mention, that going into that game, we saw that Britt Reed, Andy Reid's son, actually got into a car accident. Apparently he was impaired. He had been drinking. And in that accident, there was a 5-year-old girl that got injured, man. It's in some critical condition. So for my prayer warriors out there, man, definitely send some prayers. I don't know the young lady's name. But that's a tough situation, and I can imagine that was weighing heavily on Andy Reid. And it really looked like his team wasn't fully prepared in that game. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that they would have won that game. Because quite honestly, going into that game, they were at an extreme disadvantage with the offensive line injuries that caught up with them. Eric Fisher, Pro Bowl caliber left tackle, was out with a Achilles tear, which he's going to have surgery for. Their right tackle, Mitchell Schwartz, has been missing for weeks. Kalicia Osemele at guard had been missing. And before the season, the starting guard, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif from Canada, he opted out of the season so that he could be a first responder, because I think he's a doctor out there in Canada. And so for all intents and purposes, they were going up against that D-line with 4 backups, 1 starter and 4 backups on the offensive line. The only starter was a center. Then they had to move one tackle to left tackle. They moved 1 guard to right tackle, and they shuffled their offensive line around. And the Chiefs didn't adjust to that. Yes, Patrick Mahomes is going to get a lot of blame. I don't think he should get as much blame as he should, and I thought it was unfair that everybody hyped him up and gave him all his glory before the game just to knock him down after the game. But I don't put it all on him. I mean, he was 2 drop passes away from them scoring 2 touchdowns. Darrell Williams dropped a pass. Tyreek Hill dropped a pass in the end zone. Travis Kelce dropped a key 3rd down conversion in the first half that contributed to Tampa Bay getting a short field. But I think the coaching staff failed him. So when I say that is, I don't feel like they ran the ball enough. Going into this game, I thought that Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be a key component to them having the ability to compete with Tampa Bay. When you go back to last year when they played against the 49ers, who I believe had a better defense than Tampa Bay this year, Damian Williams, who was the running back at the time, had a huge game. He broke off some long runs. He beat him in the passing game on wheel routes, some choice routes. I think he scored twice. You could have made the case that he should have been Super Bowl MVP. When you fast forward to this season, and all season long, they've been pass heavy. They went away from the run. They started out the first game of the season, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had his coming out party, and I know he ran for more than 100 yards. I think he had close to 25 carries. And since then, they've been less balanced. And, you know, in this game, when you look at what Tampa Bay did, they were in cover 2, whether it was man or cover 2 zone, just about all game long. That's what they ran. So they had 2 deep safeties. And the Chiefs were trying to spread them out. So when you're spreading them out, when you're in shotgun like that, there's going to be at least 1, if not 2 linebackers out of the box that's creating space. And the numbers should show that you should run the ball in those situations. They didn't really start running the ball until the second half. Well, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 9 carries for 64 yards. I'm not a math major, but that's over 7 yards per carry, guys. And then he only got 2 passes. He had 3 pass attempts, but he had 2 receptions. I forget how many yards. But they didn't really involve him much in the game plan. Now, you know, looking at what they've done this season, I'm wondering if they don't trust Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be an every down back. That's what it seems that the issue is that maybe his size is a problem. I know the beginning of the season, they were trying to punch it in the goal line with him, and he was getting stopped a lot. And so I do think in the NFL, you know, a lot of times coaches really look at size, and at running back, that body mass, it matters, right? He's short. He's not really skinny. You know, he weighs, I guess, somewhere around 190, but he's 5'7". And body mass matters when you're making contact with all these big defenders. So it's not only your strength, your explosiveness, but your mass plays a big part as well. And so I wonder if they don't trust that he can be an every down back and they're not willing to give him the ball as much as they used to, like a Kareem Hunt when they had him a few years ago. And it really looks like they miss a Kareem Hunt type of back. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do moving forward. But I thought that was a big problem in the game plan. And what I would like to see Patrick Mahomes do in his evolution as a quarterback is to take something out of the Peyton Manning playbook. So back in, I believe it was 2006, when the Colts won the Super Bowl, I think they were the top offense in the league, Peyton Manning's league MVP. They were extremely pass happy. They didn't have, they had Joseph Adai and Dominique Rose, right? They didn't have great running backs, but they went up against the Chicago Bears in that game, and they ran the ball 42 times for 191 yards. I think that's a 4.5 yard per carry average. So in Peyton Manning, what Peyton Manning used to do is he used to, again, he would get in shotgun a lot. But if the boxes were light, when I say light, 6-man boxes, 5-man boxes, he's going to run the football. If the defense says to do that, that's what he's going to do. A lot of people don't realize he used to get in spread a lot of times and just to create that advantage. And so even Peyton Manning in that situation, going against Chicago, did that. I bring this example up is because Chicago under Lovie Smith used to run a lot of cover 2 man. They used to run a lot of cover 2, whether it was the Tampa 2, which the linebacker drops deep to take away the middle of the field. But they also ran a lot of cover 2 man. They may have ran some cover 2 zone. I'd have to go back and look at the game. But there was a lot of cover 2. The more of the story is they had 2 deep safeties. And so I bring that up is because what did Peyton Manning do? He took advantage of the defense by taking what the defense gives. The defense says, hey, you got to run the football. They're worried about the pass. And they came out a winner until Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl. And so that's what I would like to see the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes do, is whether he doesn't have the go-to, or I should say the green light to make checks at the line of scrimmage or not. That's something that he needs to have or do moving forward. And check to run plays, not just to other pass plays or what have you. He needs to be checking to run plays and look at what the defense is trying to do and exploit that weakness rather than just trying to pass and go up against it nonstop. And so that was one of the reasons why I thought they weren't going to make it to the Super Bowl, because I saw that a lot this season. I thought there was the Bills were going to get there. I know the Bills were an extremely pass-happy team too, but at least their quarterback used to run the ball a lot. And I thought that their defense overall was more talented. But it just came to a head when they played against Tampa Bay. And as much as we want to talk about the shiny weapons, the receivers, the tight end, the running back, it still comes to the line of scrimmage, guys. You have got to be able to win at the line of scrimmage. And that's what Tampa Bay did on both sides of the ball. Their offensive line was road great in the Chiefs' defensive line. And then on defense, their defensive line was destroying the Chiefs' offensive line. So Pat didn't really have much time. He was running around a lot. You can sit up here and say, oh, well, sometimes he escaped, when he didn't have to or whatever. Man, when you constantly getting pounded and they're knocking your offensive line back, even when you may have a little bit of protection, you're so you're so trigger happy, you're so worried about, man, I can't trust these guys to block for me. And so of course you're going to be running around. He was running for his life out there. I really felt bad for him, but I wouldn't count him out. But I do think there's some elements of things that they really need to change, because if they want to repeat, they're going to have to be more balanced. And they're going to see a lot of teams run cover 2 against them next year and force them to have to show that they can run the ball. So it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to try to establish Clyde Edwards-Helaire as an every down back, or they're going to try to bring somebody else in that they trust can do that more and just kind of use Clyde, in a supplementary role. But that's an area they're going to have to address if they want to get back to the Super Bowl, because all it's going to do is get harder. The Bills are coming alive. We don't know what happens with Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun goes to a team like the Miami Dolphins and they bring in, a number one receiver, they already have a good defense, you could have some problems with the Dolphins. So, there is no guarantee that they get back to the Super Bowl. So, I mentioned trust. The Chiefs, whether or not they trust Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I kind of want to stick with that word a little bit, trust. You can kind of almost say that that's the theme of this episode is trust. So I decided I wanted to talk about Russell Wilson and Seattle Seahawks a few days ago. And little did I know that he was going to have an interview with Dan Patrick where he was talking about expressing his frustrations with how many times he's been sacked and hit in his days in Seattle. They asked him about whether or not he's trust Seattle. He basically kind of said he's always trusted Seattle, but you can almost hear a little bit of apprehension in his voice that I don't know that he totally trusts Seattle's ability to bring in the personnel to contend for a championship. He mentioned that the team needs to play better. He mentioned himself as well, but it was kind of second to his team, and the way it came off is kind of like people perceived him throwing his offensive line under the bus. I don't know if he's necessarily just talking about last season. I know people are going to focus on last season, but this is something I think that's been brewing because Russ has always kind of kept his real feelings to himself and always kind of been politically correct and answer questions the way everybody wants you to answer them. And be really strategic in how you're phrasing things. So this is the first time we've really seen Russ kind of express, I believe his lack of trust in maybe Pete Carroll and then management. DK Metcalf, after the season, kind of mentioned that, people were asking, okay, well, what happened to y'all the second half of the year? He said, man, they figured us out. We were either run the football and just chuck bombs all day long, right? The offense wasn't versatile. So, if you know that, okay, well, we can just run cover 3. All right. We have 3 deep guys, 2 corners and a safety, or however you want to run it. You can drop 2 safeties and 1 cornerback, however you want to do it, to run your cover 3. And we just wait on them to get there. And so I know that ESPN has kind of been tracking the pass blocking rate or blocking rate, for offensive linemen. So last season they said they had a pass blocking success rate of 61.9%, which was 9th in the NFL. It's measuring their ability to hold their blocks for 2.5 seconds. They do that for pass rushes as well. Their pass rush success rate, right? Do they get to the quarterback within 2.5 seconds? So the issue with Russell Wilson, yes, some of those sacks that he's taken is his fault. He's taken 394 sacks in his 9-year career. I think it's the most over that 9-year span since Randall Cunningham. And last season, I think he took 47 sacks, which was 3rd to only Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz. So he's averaged over 40 sacks per season for the better part of his career. Some of that's on him, yes, but some of it is on the scheme. And here's what people have to understand. Russell Wilson's only about 5'10", 5'11". So it's not like a Tom Brady that, okay, well, I see over the offensive line that's anywhere from 6'4" to 6'7", and then, when my release point is above the offensive lineman's helmet, and so I can just get it out quick, and chalk it the short routes over the middle. Russell Wilson has defined passing lanes. So he cannot play quarterback the same way as Tom Brady. And if most of your passing game is to try to run on 1st and 2nd down and chalk it deep on 3rd down, well, guess what? It takes receivers time to get 15, 20, 30 yards down the field. Those are longer developing plays. So part of it is that. So you have to understand part of the reason why Russ holds on to it and he's escaping the pocket. Some of it is he's waiting for guys uncovered. He's looking for windows. Some of it is guys aren't open. The defense has got the right call on that play. So he's got to buy time and wait for the receivers to try to escape and come back to the ball and find a hole so he can chalk it. So I think it's part of it, yes, is Russell Wilson. A lot of it, though, is scheme, bad offensive scheme, and then there is some of it is offensive line. So it's kind of three-layered. I do think one step in the right direction was them hiring Shane Walden. He is from the Sean McVay coaching tree. He's been the passing game coordinator for the Rams for the past few years. And what do we know about that offense? I spoke earlier about it. They run a lot of bunch formations, a lot of 11 personnel. I know the Rams been running a lot of 12 personnel, but that was because of Jared Goff and his lack of ability to push the ball down the field consistently without play action, and just his lack of I would say off schedule plays. He doesn't have the ability to get anything off schedule because he's just a pocket passer. He doesn't have this capability. So we know in that offense, in the Rams system, they run a lot of bunch formations. Again, I mentioned it's a little bit harder to scheme up and take away a receiver when you're doing that. You're running them in motion. You're trying to pre-snap. You're trying to gauge whether it's man or zone. And then they like to be balanced. They involve the running back in the passing game. They run a lot of screens. They run wide receiver reverses, right? So I think that's one step in the right direction. I also think they do need to try to invest more in the offensive line. One issue, though, is they traded 2 first-rounders away from Jamal Adams on defense. So they're not going to have a first round, I believe, these next two years. So that's an issue. They might need to look at it in free agency to address that. And defensively, this hasn't been a top 10, top 15 defense for about 3 years. I think going back to 2016 and 2015 was the last time they had maybe like a top 10 defense. And so a lot of it has fell on Russell Wilson's shoulders. The running backs haven't been able to stay healthy. Chris Carson is a good running back, but every year he misses at least 3 or 4 games because he gets banged up. And so that's another issue that they got to look at. And they want this power running game. But, again, you don't have Marshawn Lynch back there anymore. I know Pete Carroll, keeps trying to live in that world, but Marshawn's not coming back. The Legion of Boom is not coming back. And you're going to have to improve your defensive line. You need guys that can win one-on-ones. Your linebackers are good. Your Bobby Wagner has been one of the best linebackers in the league in his career. And you can make a case he's been the best, if not the second best, middle linebacker the past few seasons. I think Devin White is coming for him. But KJ White had a career year this past season. I think they're good at safety, but they got to improve cornerback, and they got to get defensive linemen that can consistently win their one-on-ones, because in that defense, they like to run a lot of zone. They'll run some cover 1 man, but they like to run and some robber, but they like to run a lot of cover 3, and they don't really like to send extra guys to blitz to get to the quarterback. So they like to drop a lot of guys in coverage. Well, that puts a lot of pressure on the D-line. Those guys got to be able to get pressure with their front 4. So those are some issues I see with them. But hopefully they can go on ahead and address those issues and improve, because I do think Russell Wilson is one of the better quarterbacks in this league, and I'd like to see him get another crack at trying to compete for a championship. So, hopefully he can kind of mend some fences, hopefully, and create too big of a problem with some of his offensive line with what he said. Some guys may view that as disrespectful. But Russell Wilson is like a lot of these quarterbacks. They're looking at Tom Brady, went to Tampa Bay. You're like, man, I want to be able to make some personnel suggestions, about, hey, why don't we bring this guy in? These guys are thinking about their legacy, because on one hand, we want them to be good soldiers and to be loyal and to say the right things, but yet we want to hold them to a fire and put all the blame on them when they don't accumulate championships, but yet their team is not putting all the right pieces around them to succeed. So, you can't have it both ways, so, hopefully for Russ, man, things will look up for him. I kind of want to stick with that word disrespectful, so one thing I saw that was really disrespectful was the Dallas Cowboys, man. The Dallas Cowboys had a hype video that they had Troy Aikman, They had Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin. They had guys from the practice squad, their fullback, all these guys on the hype video, and yet they left off Dak Prescott. Now they want to make it seem like, oh, well, it was an oversight. Man, that's not an oversight, man. Like that's purposeful. I don't care if the person doing that video was 19 years old. Even at 19, I think I was smart enough to know you don't leave out your starting quarterback, even if he's a below average quarterback. Dak Prescott is not a below average quarterback. Dak Prescott, I would say, venture to say, he's at least in the top half of the league, right? However you want to look at it, he's at least at the top half of the league. And, for them not to include him into the hype video, here's the question I would pose, is that, so even if you say the person doing the video, maybe they were 19 or something like that, they don't know as much about what's going on. Maybe they don't know as much about sports. Okay, so you're telling me they would have that person release that video without someone else signing off on it? There has to be someone who in upper management that has to review this and make sure it's okay so that you can release that information. I don't care what anybody says, and that's a bad look. It's disrespectful to Dak Prescott. And if I'm in Dak Prescott's shoes, I'm not giving them no discount. They've had a discount for, the first few years of his league. He was a 4th-round draft pick. He's out of the quarterbacks that everybody talks about in that draft, him, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, he seems to be the only one who's ascending in his career, getting better, and also showed that he's mentally tough, that he doesn't crack mentally, whether it's off the field or during the game. And so, for me, if I'm Dak, I'm not giving him a discount. They keep throwing up and talking about his endorsements and stuff. Man, get out of that man's pockets. Just because he's got a lot of endorsement deals doesn't mean he should discount the Cowboys. They've had their discount, man. That man got drafted in the 4th round. Those other 2 guys were number 1 and number 2 in the NFL draft. So they made a lot of millions before they signed their guaranteed contract. But the Cowboys had an opportunity a couple years ago to trust that Dak was their guy, get him at the price point that they probably want. Now, you guess what? You're not going to get you $40 million a year. It is what it is. It's not about, see, in the NFL today, it's not about, okay, let's rank the quarterbacks from best to worst, and we're going to pay them that way. That's not how the paying scale goes. Each year, for the most part, whoever's due for a contract, that's who's going to make the most money. So, like, at the end of the day, and I've said this for the longest period of time, is that one of the issues these teams are going to find out is that they keep overpaying for quarterbacks that are not above replacement type of quarterbacks. When I say that, I mean like a Matt Ryan. It looks like the Falcons may be looking at moving on for Matt Ryan. We're hearing murmurs about that. Looking at the 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo. You paid Jimmy Garoppolo all that money off of, 7 games? You know what I'm saying? 7 to 10 games of history. That's just a couple of examples. These guys cannot carry a team or still operate with better than a below average talent. You've got to surround them with great talent for them to be able to perform. And so, they're not like an Aaron Rodgers. They're not like a Tom Brady. It's not like a Peyton Manning. It's not like a Deshaun Watson, right? Those quarterbacks are not like a Russell Wilson. So, that stuff is going to come back to bite you. But Dallas, you paid Zeke Elliott, which in the NFL that seems to devalue the running back. And the running back position, they paid him, his contract is a $90 million contract. And more power to Zeke. They paid Amari Cooper, who I feel like they overpaid for. I don't really feel like he's a true number 1. Excuse me. And I think they overpaid for him. They paid DeMarcus Lawrence. Hey, that's your best pass rusher. They paid him a big contract. They even paid Jalen Smith this past year. But the one guy they won't pay is Dak Prescott. So, it's going to be interesting to see what's going on, what's going to happen with the Cowboys. But I wouldn't be surprised if Dak has played his last days in Dallas, man, whether they franchise him and trade him or whatever the case may be, because they can technically give him another franchise tag. He don't have to sign it, but, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward, man. If they're not careful, and they don't handle the situation properly, let's just say, for instance, they feel like they're better off with Dak. Let's say Dak goes to the Carolina Panthers. Carolina's got some good weapons over there. And Dak goes and kills it, and they have a top 5 offense with Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator, up and coming, great offensive mind. You got Robbie Anderson over there, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel's a free agent, but assuming they bring him back. You got arguably the best running back in the league, at least top 3, in Christian McCaffrey. Come on, man. That's just one example. If that goes there, you telling me they won't have a top 5 offense? So, I think they got to be real careful with this, man. Franchise quarterbacks don't grow on trees, and it's not like they have the capital to try to move up and draft one of these top-tier quarterbacks this season. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them, man. And while I'm talking about Dallas, it must be something going on in Texas and Dallas, whether it's Houston, Dallas, whatever, man. But, man, how about them Dallas Mavericks, man? Like, they are straight up insane, bro. And when I say that, I mean it's insanity the way they run their offense. So when I watch them, the offense is give the ball to Luka. Luka, we want you to create all game long, every possession. Try to get to the backs or kick it to the shooters. Everybody else is standing out on the 3-point line. Even Porzingis, 7'3", big behind, is out there shooting threes all game long. I watched the game when they were playing the Golden State Warriors. And the tallest guy they put in the lineup was 6'6", 6'7". Porzingis is 7'3". Now, they get mad when Shaq and Charles Barkley say, man, go down there and post up them boys and barbecue chicken, mismatches. Oh, it's a different NBA, man. It's, threes and all this other type of stuff. We get all that. We get it's about space. We get analytics and talking about threes. But what does analytics say when you shooting south of 30% from 3? You're in one of the top 3 worst teams in the Western Conference. You're not even in the playoff race right now. You can't stop a nosebleed on defense. You know what I'm saying? And then you got a 7'3" guy that he don't even have to have any post moves when he's got that size advantage. All you got to do is give it to him, and he can shoot a hook shot, the turnaround jumper. That's easy work. Better yet, how about you get him in a 2-man game with Luka? Why don't you get him in a pick and roll to the basket? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand. Or pick and pop from the elbow. Why does everything have to be just shoot the 3 out there? How's that working for you? They say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. That's one of the problems with the Mavericks. There are other problems they have. They traded away Curry. I feel like offensively they don't run any good sets offensively, man, to make it easy. And people talk about Luka's 3-point shooting percentage, but bro, when you have to be the offense every time down the floor and create, and then you're taking all that contact from guys and constantly going to the free throw line, it is going to impact your legs and your ability to shoot the 3-point shot at a long distance consistently. The other thing from Luka I noticed, I would like to see him, and they're going to need somebody that's a ball handler that they feel that can run the offense, where Luka can come off of screens and take more shots off the dribble. I think that would improve his 3-point shot percentage. The other thing is, I think Luka is better shooting the ball without that back step or that side step move right before he releases the shot. When I watch him shoot the ball without using that move, it seems like his ball is a lot more on plane or on line with the rim when he just squares up and shoots rather than trying to dribble and shake somebody and sidestep him like a James Harden when he's shooting without that move. So, that's another thing I think that can improve his shooting percentage, but they're putting too much on him. And it reminds me a lot of LeBron James when LeBron's first tenure with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Their whole offense was everybody staying outside the 3-point line. LeBron create every time for everybody, and it wears on a person. And they either need to make some changes in their coaching staff. They might need to even trade Porzingis. Porzingis, he struggles to stay healthy, which might be one of the reasons why he doesn't want to go down low and just stand out there for shoot threes. But my thing is, if you 7'3", and all you do is just sit out there and shoot threes. You're not even blocking shots like you used to, and you're not rebounding at a high clip. What do I need you for? I can go find another guy that's a more athletic, right, that can defend multiple positions, that can shoot the three just as well as you. I don't need you for anything. So they might need to consider trading Porzingis, man. I know they probably were looking to try to get somebody like Giannis in free agency, but Giannis read up with the Bucs. So, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, but they got to do something, man. And I'm not going to put this all on Luke. I think it's a lot on him. He's almost averaging a triple-double. I think he's averaging around 28, 29 points per game, over 8 assists, almost 9 assists per game, almost 9 rebounds per game, somewhere right there. Really, he's doing all he can, man. And I don't think it's Luke. I think it's partially personnel. It's also a coaching issue. So, that's all I got to say about that, man. And speaking of talented players in the NBA, man, I want to finish up talking about Lamelo Ball. Lamelo Ball, man. I told y'all in episode 1, if you go back and look at my first episode, I talked about how good Lamelo Ball was and how I believe he was a future superstar in this league, and that when I saw him in the game, he made their team better. They ran their offense was more dynamic. His vision, his court vision, his ability to set up other guys, whether it's in full court, fast break situations to find trailers, or guys spotted up on the three-point line, or the attack, and also his ability in half-court sets to probe the defense, to get the defense to switch, and to for guys that have to clamp down and double him and find open players, or even find cutters, guys cutting to the basket. You see him and Miles Bridges seem to have a good connection. And so just to back up my point, so since he's become a starter, I think they're 3-2. And also, prior to him starting, when he was coming off the bench, they were averaging just under 108 points per game. Well, since he's been the starter, they've been averaging just over 120 points per game, right? And you see his numbers, man. The dude he's breaking records. He's almost a triple-double each night, and he's really efficient scoring the ball. He could. He's had one game, no turnovers, but the turnovers, that's the thing, he's young. That's going to come. But right now, as of this recording, they're the number 6 seed in the East. I said in episode 1, I said if he's the starter, they will make the playoffs. Barring any injuries, that's a playoff team because of Lamelo Ball and his ability to elevate the players around him. They had two other guards that they were putting in over him, Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier. No disrespect to those guys, but they're not true point guards. Devontae Graham is a spot-up shooter, and Terry Rozier is a one-on-one. He's in a point guard's body, but he's really a shooting guard by nature in his style of play. It's very reminiscent to a Kyrie Irving in that regard in terms of his style of play. Not on Kyrie's level, but he is score first and pass second. And he is not he doesn't have the vision or the size as LaMelo. LaMelo's like 6'6", 6'7", man. I mean, so that's the other thing you got to consider. So, moving forward, I think this team, man, like I said in the first episode, Michael Jordan has finally drafted a superstar caliber type player, and I look for him to do big things. I'm excited about it, man. I think he's the player that people have been wanting Lonzo to be. I think he's just got a different mentality and personality than Lonzo. Lonzo's more laid back. LaMelo, I think, has a little bit more, dog in him. You know what I'm saying? And he ain't afraid of nobody. And that's what I like about him. The guy can shoot, So, I look for him to do big things, man. I wish they would have started him at the beginning of the season because I think he'd be going to the All-Star game. But I look for him to do that next year. So, looking for big things from him, man. And, I saw a question that were asking, who would you rather, Ja Morant or LaMelo Ball? So, I like both of them, but I'm going to go with LaMelo just from the simple fact of his style of play. Because he doesn't play above the rim as much, I think his style of play lends itself to more longevity, Ja is so athletic and explosive, and he goes to the basket and really elevates and dunks a lot. Excuse me. We've already seen him get injured. I think he had a knee or ankle injury earlier this year. And so I think longevity is part of the reason why I would go with LaMelo Ball as if I had to choose between who I would want long term. I like both of them. I really like both of them. But because LaMelo's ball is a little bit more below the rim, and his style of play I think is more conducive to longevity and not as many injuries, I think that's where I will lean towards. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. It's been another episode of Sports We Watchin Livin Talkin. Man, you've been kicking it with your host, Herschel Robinson, a.k.a. HersheyR47. That's my Instagram handle. And guys, please subscribe to my channel. Check me out. Leave some comments. You subscribe, you won't miss anytime I drop videos or the little clips, short clips that I'm dropping. Leave some feedback, man. But other than that, guys, we out. Peace.